So I've realized after all this time that I haven't even done the newbie tag yet. And that's because I'm super thorough to the point where like I looked up all the options that people had. I didn't want to just like pick the first one I saw, and then I've come to find it's not just like one tag, it's like an ever-changing tag. So what I did was just like go around to a bunch of videos. I went to the Wikipedia and I just compiled a bunch of the questions and picked the ones that I could answer. And I don't even know who to credit for this because they didn't all come from one place. They just came from what seemed to be the general consensus around the web. Okay, so first question, why did you start this channel? And I think my answer is the same as everyone else's. It seems like we all love books, but no one around me reads at all. It's crazy. I get excited about all these books and I just want to talk about them. My room looks like a mad scientist place. You can probably see it behind me, like all these pens and stuff. That's because I'm constantly taking notes about stuff that I want to talk about, stuff I need to remember, stuff I need to work on. And it's usually book notes. And I just have nowhere, I don't have anybody to talk to. I have nobody to talk about it with. Sometimes I talk online, but sometimes people don't even respond. Maybe the problem is me. So I figured putting them into a video is a good way for me to mentally know that my notes have been saved and archived in a way for me to actually get rid of the physical notes. Plus, I like to hear everybody's opinions and it inspires me. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to BookTube? I've never even called it BookTube before. Like I had no idea that was the name of this specific niche. And when I started this channel, I didn't want it to be just book reviews. Like, yeah, I definitely wanted book reviews on there. But I'm also like a super creative person. I always wanted that to be a part of me. So in the back of my mind, I always have these ideas to like combine books and like art or just anything else. I like to take deep dives into like the complexity of characters. So I want to start doing that. I also do this thing where I incorporate tarot into the book I read to try and do that besides book reviews. I would also like to do something to where maybe I draw like bookmarks or something related to the book. I don't know, I just thought the concept of making something related to the book would be fun. What challenges do you think starting the BookTube will be the hardest to overcome? I'm mostly an introverted person and thoughts are going through my head constantly. When I read a book, it stays in my head and I never get to talk about it, but it's always there. Sharing opinions is not something I used to, or even like talking to a camera where there's nobody here. So in my mind, I sound way more articulate than I do when I'm actually trying to explain what I'm trying to say. I'm afraid of miscommunicating or saying the wrong thing or not saying something the right way. There's been a few times already, like almost every video actually, where after I've already uploaded it, I remember something else I wanted to say, but then it was kind of too late. I can't really go back in and just add something. I think getting comfortable is going to be a challenge too, because I don't have like a designated area around me to where I can film these videos comfortably. So you can see I don't like my background is so messy, but I also hope in a way it gives you something else to look at, you know, so you could just kind of zone out and listen to speaking. That's what I do. When I'm watching BookTube, I usually have it on in the background while I'm doing something else. In a way, I hate that it's so messy back here, but my room is so small. Like I'm in a literal cave, okay? But I just hope that it doesn't bother you too much until I can actually find a space of my own that I could set up to have a better background. Also, time is another huge challenge. My house is always so busy to where I usually don't even have a chance to film because somebody's always needing me for something, somebody is loud, somebody's interrupting, and I don't have a chance when nobody's here to where I can do this in peace. Aside from that, there's also work. Like I work 24/7. I might get one day off a week. I'm assistant manager, okay, to a large retail company, and unfortunately, that means I'm there practically 40 hours a week. Where I open to like 5, and then I turn around, I work like 1 to 10:30, then I turn around and open again right after that. I might get one day off, then I gotta use that to do laundry or whatever I need to do. Then it's back to work after open, so I can't even stay up late that night before. You see what I mean? I hardly have a chance to do any of these reviews. So what I do is I make a bunch of like notes again. I like notes, like lists, and I'm putting them in my computer in like Word documents. So when I'm ready to do these videos, I can just refer to the documents and hopefully get through this quick enough to where I'm not interrupted. Next question. When did you start reading? Is this a trick question? Ever since I was little, I've loved to read. I love fantastical things, like video games, the paranormal stuff. So naturally, I've always been drawn to fantasy books. I've been drawn to stories. I used to read constantly in school. Like in class, I was always the first to try to sneak my book out whenever I immediately finished an assignment. And it's like the teacher would be watching. And when I would go to pull the book out, she'd be like, okay, time to do something else. Put it back. I think she did it on purpose, honestly. Like, I remember trying to read Lord of the Rings in high school. And I loved my library. This concept of having just so many books available to you was like, I never knew what I was going to find. And Lord of the Rings was one of those. And I couldn't read it because like it was so out of my scope, but yet I just kept reading them. And I would fail the tests on the computer, even though like I had just finished the book, okay? And the librarian would be like, oh, well, maybe you need to read them a little slower. But I didn't want to. I wanted to devour them. I remember going to summer camp one time, okay? And I couldn't go with everybody else because I had some kind of doctor appointment or something. So I had to wait. While I was waiting, as a reward for being so patient and doing this or something, they bought me a Harry Potter book. So on the way to camp, I laid down in the back seat and I was reading Harry Potter the whole way there. I was like 8 or so, mind you. When I got there, though, I was so sick from reading in the car or laying upside down, maybe both, I don't know. I couldn't even eat the s'mores that everybody was making. I had to go lay down on the first day of camp because I was sick from reading Harry Potter in the car the whole way there. That kind of stuck with me as a kid. Like 30 years later, I know not to read a book in a car because I'm afraid it's going to happen again. Every time I go to the store, I immediately get drawn to the book section of the store. And I know I shouldn't because I don't need to spend any more money on books, but I really want to buy books. Do you know what I'm saying? I know some kids who are like at school or whatever, so they bring home those what do you call it? Like the Scholastic, they do the little book catalogs where you can order the books and go to the book fair or whatever. I always take those and I'm like looking at them and reading. I'm like, what you got in here? And I know it's for kids, but I remember being a kid, I loved the book fair. I wanted to go every day, and all these books were so cool to me. But the older I got, the less I was reading. And there's a common problem. When I'm reading at work, I hear a lot of people make comments about how oh, they used to love reading and that they wish they could read again, or they wish they could read, And I just feel like people forget about it because they just run out of time in their lives. So for the longest time, I went without reading for a while, after high school. And that was until I was at work a few years ago. And we always sell books at work. But it's really cheap books, nonfiction, self-help books, weird biographies, like Trump's biography, the retail owner's biography, just random, the $3 mystery and the trashy romance books. Yeah, I bought a couple of those. They're actually pretty good. One day I had a coworker randomly mention to me, this looks like a book you would like. But it was The House of Hades. And they were right. I looked at this book and I'm like, I want this. I want to read this. When I bought it, I didn't realize that it was the 4th book in the series. So I actually had to go and buy the whole Heroes of Olympus set just to get to this book. And I devoured the series. I loved it. And the thing was, I didn't even read Percy Jackson. I didn't know this was a second sequel. This was the sequel to Percy Jackson. I just loved this series by itself. So afterwards, that got me back into reading, and it just took off constantly from there. Where do you read? Truthfully, in the back of my mind, I constantly want to be reading. All this other stuff I'm doing, I want to be reading more. But the thing is, I like to multitask. I can't just sit here in the middle of the day and read a book, knowing that I could be doing a bunch of different stuff. If I'm playing a game, I like to have YouTube going at the same time. Then I'll be on my phone answering my email and my text. I don't know, I don't want to just do one thing. So if I bring the book with me almost everywhere I go, I usually have time to read it. Right now, I usually only have time to read while I'm on break at work. because I can't go anywhere. I have to just be there for like an hour. I finished eating within like 5 to 10 minutes. So I had the rest of that hour to read the book. And you'd be surprised how far you can get in an hour. But it's also good because I don't get burnt out by like reading too much. The other place I can read is at home in my bed. So when I get home, I immediately set my stuff down and put my book up in my bed by my pillow. So when I'm trying to go to sleep, I have trouble sleeping. So I will read until I fall asleep, if it's not too late. The only problem with that is sometimes it's either too late to read, like I don't go to bed till 1 or 2 and I gotta get up at 7, or I'm just too tired. Like I start reading and get through 2 paragraphs and just start falling asleep. I have to be careful with that too, because when I do start reading, I end up reading too much because I didn't get to read until now. So I'll end up starting at like 11, and then I'll check my clock and it'll be 3 o'clock. It's the only place I'm not disturbed though. Because even at work when I'm trying to read, the cashier always needs help. So I get called off my break like 5 or 6 times to go void something or help them. And it interrupts my reading. So when I'm in bed, if I get the chance, it's like the only time I can do any reading. What kind of books do you like to read? I figured this would be kind of obvious by now. Completely fantasy. I don't really like nonfiction or contemporary books. A lot of people read those, but they just really bore the hell out of me because like it's too close to reality. Me, I want to read books and let my imagination go. You know, I like the journey, I like the adventure, I like the different time periods. I like all the medieval shows, the historical ones, I like Vikings and Game of Thrones and Into the Badlands. All those shows that are like based in reality but are still fantastical. I like a really good, creative, dramatic story. That doesn't mean good characters. I like good stories. Mages, knights, wars. If it's got a map in it, then it's probably for me. So at 31, I'm not really a YA fan. The problem with that is I end up continuously reading YA. And that's because I fall into this trap of the blurb of it. Like the idea of the YA books sound really nice. They sound really fun and they sound good. But the way they're written, you can tell that they're just for such a younger audience. And I can't stand that. So it ends up like destroying my experience. And it's just not relatable to me. That's the problem. Sort of like with anime. I love anime. I always have when I was a kid or a teenager, whatever. But the older you get, it's harder to find some that are more relatable to you because they're not adults. They're all 17 and they're 18. They're children. I'm like, I don't want to watch a show about children. I'm not a child anymore. Can we have an anime with a character who's 31 in it? Then I might watch it. Now, it doesn't mean because you're older that it has to be boring. It could be the same exact as all the rest of them, but just with an older character. Why is that so difficult to find? So you'll end up seeing me read quite a bit of YA. But like it's usually not by choice. It's usually an accident. Like I don't know it's YA. And then either get sent to me in one of these book boxes that I'm subscribed to and it looks pretty and it sounds good. And then when I'm reading it, I realize, oh shoot, I'm halfway through this and it's YA. But I'm reading it anyway. But also, I don't want to get burned out to the point where I don't feel like reading anything. So every now and then when I read a heavy book, I'll take a break and read something completely random, like a contemporary, or even, I like to read thrillers sometimes too, like my shelf. I have 2 shelves full of just Stephen King books. And those usually make me miss fantasy, so I end up going back to the fantasy. It works in a tandem. Why do you love reading? I thought this was a self-explanatory question, but let's go deeper. Stories have real power, like thinking back to as far as we can. Let's go back to the Vikings. The stories we know have been passed down through time. Pretty much our whole history is reliant on the fact that we heard it from somebody in the past. Either if it was written down, and even back then, they couldn't read or write, so all they could do was tell each other stories. And the power in that is you captivate people and they listen. Yeah, they're exaggerated a bit. I don't remember who said it, about somebody saying, I think it was like, the King Killer one. What is that? Some kind of quote about if it has to be a good story, it has to be exaggerated a little bit. And I think that's true. You want to make it fun. You don't want to just talk to somebody and be like, yeah, this happened. I'll tell them how when it was happening, the rain was beating down all around you, and there was nobody for miles, and you thought you were gonna die, and all this. I mean, just put a little flair on it. Even the bards. Like, people crap on bards all the time, but to be fair, all that glory and the poems and all that, like, I'm pretty sure bards are meant to be protected because they're the ones in charge of your story throughout history. They can perceive you. They can give you a bad reputation or they can give you a good reputation. So you better be nice to them. What is your book collection like? Well, I'm not going to show you because it's so unorganized. Like, let me see how many bookshelves I have. I have one right here by my TV, my entertainment system. That's so stacked, I had to actually put books behind the books. I have one bookshelf here that goes from the floor to the ceiling. That's also 2 stacked behind each other. Some just stacked in front, some just sitting in front because I ran out of room. I have 3 in the hallway. Yes. I have like a medium one. No, 2. I have 2 in the hallway. I have a medium one. It's got like random stuff on it, like old books, classics, journals. And then I have a smaller one that just has more random books on it. In the living room, I have a super huge bookshelf. I even have books down here on the bottom shelf of my entertainment system next to like my PlayStation and my DVDs because I ran out of room. I have so many books everywhere. It's the personification of chaotic evil. And a lot of them weren't even books I bought. Like, some of them were just gifted to me and I keep them for sentimental reasons. Some are really old and beat up, but they're nostalgic to me from childhood, so I just keep them anyway. I've even got some books that are mixed between hardcover and paperback. Different covers. Because I might have just like bought them at different times and the other one wasn't available. I don't know. I've got fan books. Like, I have a Supernatural Collector's Edition book somewhere in here. I have photo books of like drama actors from when I was a teenager. Band photo books. I've got a bunch of magazines. I've got journals, so many journals. I have a journal for like every different subject. Yes, I have a reading journal, but I wish I had completed enough of it that I was staying with it so I could show it to you. And I have at least 3 shelves of comic books. All DC only. Remember that. Not Marvel, only DC. It's all, it's Hellblazer, it's a lot of Batman, it's all the DC events like Death Metal, Dark Knight's Metal, I have Knights of Steel, I have so much Nightwing, so many Titans. One day, when I get more room, I've talked about this, my dreams, we're going to have a room full just for like a library. I could organize the bookshelves and have so many bookshelves that are so nice and neat. One day. How many books in a series are too much? I'll tell you this right now. Let me Google something. 14. That's how many books are in the Wheel of Time series, okay? And I've gotten through like 5. I love this series, don't get me wrong. But that is a lot of books. No, but seriously, consider it like shows, okay? Consider it like shows. It's a double-edged sword. Because some shows you love go on for years and years and years. And eventually, it does start to dip. And I come to find that most seasons top out around 4 or 5. Season 4 or 5. After that, it's just boop, 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 boop. Most of the time, I'm already so attached to the series, I don't care if a million more seasons come out. As long as I get to spend more time with the characters I love. I feel that way. There have been favorites. And as long as it doesn't canonically change anything, any important information about like a character's history, like comic books, I'm looking at you, then I'm going to keep reading it. And on the opposite end, some books need to be drawn out more and have more in a series because I feel like it didn't get enough time to say what I wanted to say. Hardcover or paperback? Talk of the day, huh? Honestly, I'd read both, and I have both. It usually comes down to either whatever cheapest at the time, whatever's just available. And I usually prefer the greatest quality because hardcovers and paperbacks usually have 2 different covers. I know paperbacks are notoriously easier to carry around with you, but I do find carrying hardcovers with me to work. I'm very careful about the book itself. Like, if it has a dust jacket, I'll set it down carefully to where it's not bending it. Or if I had to set it down on a shelf at work to set it there, I'll clear off the shelf first. Make sure, or even I'll put a paper towel down, that way I know for sure that it's not going to be sitting on anything dirty. It's just like I know it sounds like a lot for a book, but if it's like, I care about it. So it takes a second for me to lay down a paper towel and set the book on it. You know what I'm saying? I enjoy getting the special edition, pretty hardcovers, and I get compliments at work, because some of them have like sprayed edges, and people are always like, "Oh, that's such a pretty book." I even show them the inside. I show them like the pictures and all that, and they love it. I do too, and they look better on a shelf. I'll give you that. Some paper books really do look like they sit on a shelf and just kind of decay, but hardcovers always look good on a shelf. And on that note, I won't really carry a book that has an embarrassing looking cover on the front of it. Like if the art's just bad, or if it's kind of corny, or something like that. If I have to carry it with me, I'll turn it on the inside so where the back is facing out so nobody can see what I'm carrying. So they say don't judge a book by your cover, but you totally do. I do. If you're going to have it and you're going to look at it all the time, you don't want to look at something you like. That's why I don't knock on people who, they make fun of guys who play girl characters or whatever. But on the opposite end, they have girls who play guy characters for the same exact reason. Your character is going to be yours. You're going to be looking at them the whole time you're playing. You want to be looking at somebody you like to look at. I understand. And on the cover, I would like something nice and pretty to look at that reminds me of the book I'm reading. I usually prefer to have a character on it. But I like books in general, so I'm not going to just throw it against the wall because it's a paperback. I'm going to take care of it no matter what. The only books I don't do are typically ebooks. Like, if it works, that's great for you. It is. Reading is reading, whether it's audiobook or whatever. But it's just I can't focus on it when I use it. Like, okay, my sister knows I love reading, so she bought me a Kindle for my birthday one day. And out of respect, I've tried to use it, and I've tried to download the books and all that and read it, but I can't just sit here and do this and consider reading a book. It's like reading, it feels like to me, just reading a really long internet article. Like, I could just browse and say I've read a book. It doesn't have the same effect. Same thing with the audiobook. I get so distracted because I do other things. Even when I have a YouTube video on in the background and I'm like playing a game or something, I end up having to restart that video like 5 times because I'm paying attention to the game and I've missed what they're saying. So you can't tell me that you don't get distracted when you're listening to an audiobook. You might be talking to someone, you might be driving and you're paying attention. I bet you miss a couple of sentences. And me, I don't want to miss anything when I'm reading the book, okay? I don't know how you do it. I don't know. I can't do it. My attention needs to be 100% focused on that book. I have to have it in my hands. I have to flip it. Favorite book. Now, this is a hard choice. I've read so many books. This year alone, okay? It might be half 100. I don't know. How are you supposed to expect me to choose one? I have a lot of books I loved. My favorite stories are Robin Hood and the story of King Arthur. Those are the kind of stories I like. And I like to read about, myths and legends, the gods, different gods. And when I was younger, I used to tell people my favorite book was Shadow of the Wind. And right now, I can't even tell you what it was about. If I had to pick one, I could pick a safe one and do a classic and say The Picture of Dorian Gray. Like, that book is amazing. There's so much in it. Every time I try to write something about it, I end up contradicting myself with a different part and just something else to latch on to. Just the story of immortality and perception and time. I love that story. I do. I guess I can list off some recent 5-star reads. Let me check. Some of my 5-star reads include Pet Sematary. Of course, that book is genius. Just the power of grief and what it can do to you. The Slow Incline. That book is genius. Okay. The Dragonbone Chair. That's one of the first fantasy books that somebody found for me at a garage sale a long time ago, but like before everybody knew about it. It was crazy. Christine, another Stephen King book. I love the concept of you bond with your car, and I feel like a lot of people do. They think it's silly, so you don't really see it that way. I think you ignore it, but you do bond with your car in a way. Of course, The Wheel of Time is up there. Sherwood, the Robin Hood story. The Raven Boys, that was a more recent 5-star one that really impressed me. I was prepared for a YA, and I just found a 5-star book instead. I was impressed. Cinderella Sins is another 5-star one. I forgot about that. It's really unique in its own way. Kings of the Wild, another recent one. I love the humor in it, and I love the heartstrings it pulled on, getting older. An Enchantment of Ravens. I don't even know why I love that one so much. I just love the aesthetic, the autumn feel, the characters, the world, and I love the unique idea of trading a trade for a favor from the Fae. Lancelot, that is another 5-star one. Of course, it's a King Arthur retelling, but it's supposed to do with Lancelot. And the way it's written is amazing. I highly recommend it to anybody. It's a long book, but it's worth it. Fable, it's another series I love that I don't even know why. I just love the world, the aesthetic, the characters. One Dark Window, that was another unique idea. As you can see, I really do like the unique ideas. This was about somebody who, there's like sort of like tarot cards involved, but whoever wields one has that one's power, and it could be a secret for all we know. And she's constantly being haunted by like this demon figure. It's great. Listed off a few more. Where Oceans Burn. Okay, yeah, from there it just goes down to like 4 stars, but you get the point, right? You get an idea of the books I like. So I finally finished this tag, and I hope I got all the questions. I never stopped. I had to stop myself. I would have just kept gathering questions and never would have finished it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, do I have another news? I have news. So my book was actually just released yesterday. Okay, I've been working on it since January, and it finally came about. I'm going to make a video about how it came about, the costs, since everybody's into that, and the experience behind it. Yeah, if you want to, check it out, and maybe don't hate on me too much. It's Cove of Storms, and the cover was designed by the amazing Bruno Barros, and the map inside was designed by Worldworm. So yes, I'm giving credit where it's due, and if you want to know a little bit about it, it's about a village dancer named Matthias. His best friend, that he's sort of like secretly in love with, gets killed one day. It's not a spoiler because it's a huge part of the book. The point is that they know of this necromancer as a legend when they were kids, and he makes it. He is actually driven by grief in this time, regret, second chances and all that, and just, even if they don't love you, you still can't help but to want to do things for them anyway, right? So he wants to go on this journey to try and bring his friend back to life. But to do that, the necromancer asks some impossible tasks. Matthias ends up spiraling down into some questionable choices, should we say, and he gets joined by 2 more characters, which we have a classic thief named Raven and a gemcaster named Anya. I love the story. I'm attached to it. I've been working on it constantly. I listened to feedback, I changed a bit here and there, and I can't wait to get started on the sequel. So if you'd like to check it out, there's an Amazon link I'll leave below, and here's to more reviews and stuff in the future.